I watched my father-in-law's hands tremble as he opened the envelope, his face draining of color when he saw the ownership papers inside. Around the perfectly decorated Christmas tree, his family sat in stunned silence. The same people who'd spent years treating me like I didn't belong in their world of luxury and privilege. "This can't be right," Heather whispered, her voice barely audible. But it was right, and after everything they'd put me through, this moment felt like sweet justice. "My name is Lauren Adams. I'm 32 years old, and I live what most people would call a double life. Not the exciting kind you see in movies, no secret agents or hidden identities. Just me, working 2 jobs that leave me exhausted every single day while sitting on enough money to buy half the businesses in this town. Every morning starts the same way. My alarm screams at 5:30, and I drag myself to the local clinic where I handle patient intake until noon. Then it's straight to my retail job at the department store, dealing with customers who treat me like I'm invisible until 6 o'clock. By the time I get home to my modest apartment, my feet are killing me, and my husband Michael is already grading papers at our tiny kitchen table. Michael comes from money, real money. His family owns Patterson Luxury Furnishings, the kind of high-end furniture store where a single chair costs more than most people make in a month. But here's the thing about Michael. He chose to be a teacher instead of joining the family business. His parents, Robert and Margaret Patterson, still haven't forgiven him for that decision, and they definitely haven't forgiven him for marrying me. The Pattersons made their feelings about me crystal clear from day one. I wasn't good enough for their son, with my working-class background and my embarrassing budget lifestyle. Michael's sister Heather was the worst of them all, always making little comments about my clothes, my job, the way I pronounce certain words. She had this talent for making insults sound like concern. Well, things changed last Tuesday night in ways I never expected. I was in the kitchen making dinner when Michael's phone rang. He stepped into the living room, but our apartment is small enough that I could hear every word. It was Heather, and she wasn't trying to keep her voice down. "Michael, we need to talk about Christmas," she said, her tone sharp and businesslike. "Mom and Dad want to keep it intimate this year, just immediate family." My husband's voice dropped lower. "Heather, Lauren is my wife. She is immediate family." "You know what I mean?" The disdain in her voice was unmistakable. Her whole situation is just too embarrassing. The way she dresses, those awful jobs she insists on keeping, it brings down the entire family's image. We have important clients who might stop by, and we can't have them thinking we associate with people like that. The wooden spoon I was holding clattered into the pot. People like that. After 6 years of marriage, after every awkward family dinner where I smiled through their condescension, after every holiday where I brought homemade gifts while they exchanged designer everything, I was still just people like that to them. Michael's protest was pathetic. "She's not that bad, Heather. Maybe if you just gave her a chance." Not that bad. My own husband defending me with all the enthusiasm of someone describing day-old bread. I stood there in my tiny kitchen, listening to him cave to his sister's demands, and something inside me finally snapped. Then there's the secret I've been carrying for 2 years now, the one that would make the Patterson family's jaws hit their expensive marble floors if they knew the truth. Remember how I mentioned sitting on enough money to buy half the businesses in town? The weird part is, I already own the one that matters most to them. 2 years ago, when Patterson Luxury Furnishings was 3 months away from bankruptcy, someone swooped in with enough cash to save the company. The family thinks it was an anonymous investor who believed in their brand. They have no idea their financial savior was the woman they won't even invite to Christmas dinner. But that conversation with Heather changed everything, because sometimes the people who underestimate you the most are the ones who need the biggest wake-up call. My inheritance came from my grandmother, Sarah. She died when I was 26, leaving me more money than I knew what to do with. The woman lived in a tiny house with faded wallpaper and furniture older than me, but apparently she'd been playing the stock market like a chess grandmaster for 40 years. Nobody in my family had a clue. Sarah taught me something important before she passed. "Money doesn't make you better than anyone, Lauren," she'd said, holding my hand in that hospital bed, "but it gives you choices. Use those choices wisely." Well, I thought I was being wise. Turns out I was just being invisible. After that phone call with Heather, I couldn't sleep. Michael tried to smooth things over the next morning, bringing me coffee and using that gentle voice he reserves for his most difficult students. "Maybe it's better this way," he said. "You know how my family can be. Less stress for everyone." Less stress for everyone except me, apparently. The woman who'd been bending over backwards for 6 years to fit into their perfect little world. I looked at my husband, this man I loved enough to secretly save his family's business, and realized he was okay with me being erased from Christmas. Actually okay with it. That's when I called my lawyer. Jonathan Mitchell has been handling my finances since the inheritance came through. He's one of those attorneys who charges enough per hour to fund a small country, but he's worth every penny. Discreet, thorough, and completely unimpressed by wealthy families who think their last name makes them untouchable. "I need the documentation," I told him over the phone. "All of it. The bailout, the ownership transfer, everything that proves I own controlling interest in Patterson Luxury Furnishings." There was a pause. Jonathan had advised me against the anonymous route 2 years ago. He'd warned me that good deeds done in shadows rarely get the recognition they deserve. "Are you sure about this, Lauren? Once you reveal yourself, there's no going back to the way things were." The way things were meant being treated like a charity case by people living off my money. I'm sure. Here's what the Patterson family doesn't know about their precious company's near collapse. It wasn't just about declining sales or market changes. Robert Patterson had made some spectacularly bad investments, including a failed expansion into European markets that burned through their cash reserves faster than a house fire. By the time they realized how deep they were in trouble, the bank was already preparing foreclosure notices. Michael came home those nights looking like he'd aged 10 years. His father was too proud to admit the scope of the disaster, but Michael could see it happening. The family business that had supported 3 generations was about to become a cautionary tale about overextension and poor judgment. I spent weeks researching the situation, using connections I'd never told Michael about. My grandmother hadn't just left me money, she'd left me her financial advisor, her accountant, and her network of business contacts. People who knew how to move large amounts of money without leaving fingerprints. The bailout took 3 months to structure properly. We created a shell company, then another company to own that one, then a trust to manage the whole thing. By the time the money reached Patterson Luxury Furnishings, it had been filtered through so many legal entities that tracking it back to me would require forensic accounting and a team of investigators. But here's the part that would really blow their minds. I didn't just loan them the money, I bought them out. The terms were generous. The family kept operational control, kept their salaries, kept their fancy offices. They just didn't keep ownership. That belonged to me now, along with 68% of the company's stock, all while working my 2 jobs and living in our cramped apartment like nothing had changed. The next few weeks were torture. Michael left for work each morning talking about Christmas plans I wasn't part of. Heather kept calling with updates about the menu, the decorations, the guest list that very specifically didn't include me. Margaret sent Michael a box of expensive ornaments for your tree at home, with a note saying how much she looked forward to their intimate family celebration. Meanwhile, I'm pulling double shifts at the clinic during flu season, dealing with sick kids and worried parents who yell at me when the wait times get long, then rushing to the department store, where customers treat me like furniture until they need something, all while watching social media posts of the Patterson family's elaborate Christmas preparations. Heather's Instagram was particularly painful. Photo after photo of their massive house being decorated by professional designers. "Getting ready for our cozy family Christmas." She captioned one picture of a tree that probably cost more than most people's cars. The comments were full of her friends praising their sophisticated celebrations and their refined guest list. Refined. like I was some kind of contaminant that would ruin their perfect holiday. But the worst part was watching Michael transform during those weeks. At home, he was my husband, the man who chose teaching over money, who said he loved my authenticity, who claimed he didn't care about his family's wealth. But every conversation with his family chipped away at that version of himself. He started making small comments about my clothes, suggesting I might want to dress up more often. He bought me expensive perfume I never asked for, then looked hurt when I didn't wear it every day. He was trying to make me into someone his family could tolerate. The irony was devastating. 3 days before Christmas, I made my final decision. Jonathan had prepared everything: copies of the ownership documents, financial records showing the money trail, legal documentation proving my majority stake in their company. Everything was organized in a manila envelope that looked completely unremarkable from the outside. Christmas morning arrived gray and cold. Michael left early, carrying presents wrapped in expensive paper and wearing the new suit his mother had bought him. He kissed me goodbye and said he'd be back by evening, like he was going to run errands instead of celebrating the holiday without his wife. I sat in our quiet apartment for exactly 30 minutes after he left. Then I got dressed, grabbed the envelope, and drove to the Patterson family's house in the hills. Time to crash their refined Christmas party with a little reality check about who really owned their comfortable life. Because sometimes the people who think you're beneath them need to learn they've been looking up at you all along. The drive to their house felt longer than usual, but maybe that was just my heart pounding against my ribs. Their house looked like something from a luxury magazine spread. Every window glowed warm and golden. Wreaths hung perfectly on every door, and the circular driveway was lined with cars that cost more than most people's annual salaries. Through the tall windows, I could see the family gathered around their enormous Christmas tree, exchanging gifts wrapped in paper that probably cost more per sheet than I made in an hour. Michael sat on the cream-colored sofa, laughing at something his father said. He looked relaxed in a way I hadn't seen in months. Comfortable. Like this was exactly where he belonged, and the missing piece, me, wasn't really missing at all. That image gave me the final push I needed. I walked up to their front door and knocked. Not the doorbell. That felt too polite for what I was about to do. Just 3 firm knocks that echoed through their marble foyer. Margaret opened the door, and the expression on her face was priceless. Shock, followed quickly by that practiced smile wealthy people use when they encounter something unpleasant but can't immediately escape. Lauren, how unexpected. Merry Christmas, Margaret. I stepped inside before she could object, envelope tucked under my arm. I hope you don't mind the intrusion. The living room went silent when I appeared. Heather's mouth actually fell open. Robert fumbled with his coffee cup. Michael looked like he'd seen a ghost, which wasn't far from accurate considering how thoroughly his family had tried to erase me from existence. What are you doing here? Heather recovered first, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. This is a family gathering. Funny you should mention family, I smiled, keeping my voice steady despite my racing heart. Because I have something that belongs to this family, and it's time everyone knew where it really came from. Robert cleared his throat, trying to regain control of his domain. Lauren, if this is about Christmas dinner, we can discuss it later. Today isn't appropriate for... Actually, today is perfect. I pulled out the envelope. Robert, you're going to want to see this. All of you are. The weight of that envelope felt like carrying dynamite. 2 years of secrets, 2 years of watching this family live comfortably off money they didn't know, came from the woman they considered beneath them. 2 years of biting my tongue while they made jokes about my clothes and my jobs and my complete lack of sophistication. Michael finally found his voice. Lauren, what's going on? You're scaring everyone. Scaring everyone. Because the idea of me having any real power in this situation was so foreign, it registered as a threat. I'm not here to scare anyone, I said, walking over to Robert. I'm here to clear up a misunderstanding that's gone on way too long. Robert took the envelope with hands that weren't quite steady. The room held its collective breath as he opened it and pulled out the ownership documents, the bank statements, the transfer records, page after page of proof that their financial salvation hadn't come from some mysterious benefactor who believed in their family's business acumen. It came from me. His face went white, then red, then white again. This can't be right. It's absolutely right. My voice carried more confidence than I'd felt in years. Patterson Luxury Furnishings belongs to me, 68% controlling interest, acquired when I bailed you out 2 years ago. You know, back when you were 3 months from bankruptcy. Heather's whisper was barely audible. This can't be right. Margaret sank into her chair like someone had cut her strings. You mean, all this time, the woman you deemed too embarrassing for Christmas dinner has been the reason you still have Christmas dinners in this house. I looked around the room, meeting each shocked face. The reason you still have the family business, the reason you still have your comfortable lifestyle. Michael stared at me like I was a stranger. You never told me about any of this. Would it have mattered? The question hung in the air like smoke. Would you have fought harder for me if you'd known I could buy and sell your family's legacy twice over? The silence stretched until Robert finally spoke, his voice hoarse. Why? Why would you help us and then hide it? Because I loved your son, and I thought family meant supporting each other, even when nobody's watching. I took a breath, feeling lighter with every word. Turns out I was wrong about what family means to you people. The documents were being passed around now, each family member studying them like they might contain different information if they squinted hard enough. But numbers don't lie, and lawyers don't make mistakes when this much money is involved. You could have destroyed us, Margaret whispered. Any time in the last 2 years. I still could. The words came out matter of fact, not threatening. But that was never the point. I don't want your business or your money or your house. I just want basic human respect from people who owe their entire lifestyle to my generosity. I walked toward the door, leaving them with their papers and their shattered assumptions. Michael, when you're ready to have a real conversation about what marriage means, you know where to find me. Behind me, the silence spoke louder than any argument could have. The drive home felt different. My hands weren't shaking anymore. The weight I'd carried for 2 years was finally gone, replaced by something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. My phone started buzzing before I reached the main road. Michael, of course. I let it go to voicemail. Then Heather called. Margaret. Even Robert tried reaching me. The sound of my phone lighting up every 30 seconds would have been funny if it weren't so predictable. 20 minutes later, I was back in our tiny apartment, making coffee in our cramped kitchen. The same kitchen where I'd overheard that phone call 3 weeks ago. Everything looked exactly the same, but I felt completely different. Michael burst through the door an hour later, still wearing his expensive Christmas sweater. Lauren, we need to talk. Now we need to talk. I settled into my favorite chair with my coffee. Interesting timing. He started pacing, running his hands through his hair like he always did when stressed. You should have told me about the money, about saving the company, about everything. Should have told you so what? So you could have defended me. Better to your family? Or so you could have felt more comfortable being married to someone with money? That's not fair. Fair? I laughed, and it felt good. Michael, I worked 2 jobs for 6 years while sitting on enough money to retire tomorrow. I saved your family's business and never asked for credit. I got excluded from Christmas because your sister thinks I'm embarrassing. Tell me more about fair. He stopped pacing. What happens now? That depends on you. I took a sip of coffee, watching him process everything. I'm not interested in running their business or destroying what they built, but I'm done pretending to be less than I am just to make other people comfortable. And us? The question hung between us like a bridge we both had to decide whether to cross. Us depends on whether you can love your wife for who she actually is, not who your family wants her to be. I stood up, suddenly exhausted. Because the woman you married? She's been here all along. You just never bothered to really see her. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from Margaret. Can we please talk? I smiled and turned off the phone. Some conversations could wait. Outside, snow started falling, covering everything in a fresh layer of white. Clean slate weather. Perfect timing.